War of words heating up in Legco oath-taking saga.
The situations in many of these private care homes are disastrous. Many people died, abused, and sexually assaulted.
Growing calls for the government to step up monitoring of care homes.
It's to the best interest of my country that we maintain that relationship, because the people of my country is not ready to accept.
And Rodrigo Duterte says separation from the United States doesn't mean cutting off ties.
Good evening. The oath-taking controversy is not going away. Former Legco President Tsang Yok-sing has defended a government legal challenge to try to prevent a number of localist lawmakers from being sworn in. And he believes postponing their swearing in until the court makes a ruling on the issue would be a safer approach for now. Adam Shu has our top story.
It's a divisive topic in town, whether to give Young Inspiration Sixtus Leung and Yao Wai-ching a second chance to be sworn in as legislators, after their first oaths containing offensive words and even expletives were declared invalid. In a controversial move this week, the government mounted a legal challenge to try to prevent them from retaking their oaths. What's more, pro-establishment lawmakers staged a walkout at Legco on Wednesday, and last night they threatened to do that again in next week's meeting. Former Legco President Tsang Yok-sing told TVB News today his successor Andrew Leung has the power to decide whether the retaking of oaths should be on the agenda. But for now, he should be waiting for the court's ruling before allowing anyone who may be disqualified in future to be sworn in. But Tsang played down suggestions that the government is undermining the separation of powers among the executive, legislative and judicial branches with its legal action.
It is exactly checks and balances we are talking about. Now, the chief executive has the responsibility to enforce the basic law. If he believes that someone has made a mistake, has made a decision inconsistent with basic law, he doesn't act. He doesn't do anything. Now, that will be giving away or running away from his responsibility. Now, instead of the government telling the president to revert his decision, to withdraw his decision, the government says, we believe it is wrong, so let the court decide.
Lawmakers-elect have to comply with the Oaths and Declaration Ordinance in order to be sworn in. Tsang stressed that's purely a legal matter.
No one is screening them. No one is making any political censorship. If they simply took the oath as required by the law, then no one can keep them away from their seats. Are you suggesting that legislators can do whatever they want, regardless of the law, and will be able to remain in their seats? I don't think this is what rule of law means.
Adam Shu, TVB News.
And the two localists at the centre of the oath-taking controversy, Sixtus Leung and Yao Wai-ching, headed to Taiwan today to speak at a forum. A top pro-establishment figure, Rita Fan, criticised the timing of their trip, saying it would do more harm than good. Young Inspiration duo Sixtus Leung and Yao Wai-ching have been invited to speak at a forum on Hong Kong's localist movement at the National University of Taiwan. But the timing of their trip is raising eyebrows. Rita Fan, a Hong Kong member of the National People's Congress Standing Committee, warned their visit could do more harm than good.
At least from the surface of things, it seems that they have not taken heed of what has happened to their act during the oath, taking the oath ceremony. And now they feel they have gone to Taiwan, presumably exchange views with the Taiwan officials who basically are in favor of independence of Taiwan. So I don't think that helped to lessen the crisis. If anything, it caused the crisis to increase.
Now, on whether Leung and Yao should be allowed to retake their oaths, both the government and pro-establishment lawmakers appear determined to prevent them from doing so. But across the political divide, the lawmaker representing the legal sector has urged his pro-establishment counterparts to reconsider their plan.
I understand that a lot of them are very angry at what the two members did during the oath-taking 2 weeks ago. I fully understand and share the sentiment. But having said that, I think you've got to respect the law and the procedures and not to allow political goals to trump the system. And I think that's very important.
While the High Court has thrown out an injunction to stop the Youngspiration pair from taking their oaths, a court hearing on a judicial review application by the government against the LegCo president's decision to let them be sworn in has been set for November the 3rd.
In other local news, concern groups have accused the government of dragging its feet when it comes to the monitoring of private care homes. The Social Welfare Department said today it would give these facilities 2 years to improve their services. But as Adam Shu tells us, critics say that's far from satisfactory.
Legislators and concerned groups' representatives met with the head of the Social Welfare Department today. Among their demands, amending the Residential Care Homes Persons with Disabilities Ordinance to hold care homes to higher standards. This follows a government move to strip a home for the disabled in Kwai Chung of its temporary license after an alleged sexual assault case and 6 deaths in the past 8 months were exposed. The department's director, Carol Yip, said the city's 251 residential care homes holding temporary certificates would have 2 years to make a difference in order to obtain a formal license. She expects 90% of them will be qualified by then. Those that fail to do so, she added, will be forced out of the market. But activists were not impressed.
We're extremely disappointed, frustrated and angered by the response from Social Welfare Department today. The situations in many of these private care homes are disastrous. Don't forget the licensing law was enacted in 2011. It's been 5 years from then. And she is asking for another 2 to 3 years. And we think this is totally ridiculous. The ordinances that are involved in monitoring these licensing of care homes for either elderly or disabled people should be rehauled, totally reviewed and upgrade to an up-to-date standard in terms of staffing, the actual places, and also in terms of the punishment.
The concerned groups also called for a multi-party platform to monitor these institutions. Chung said they will now decide what to do next to press for their demands. Adam Xu, TVB News.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has made clear separation from the United States doesn't mean cutting off ties with Washington. He stressed it's in his country's best interest to stay with America.
I said separation. What I was really saying was separation of a foreign policy, that it need not dovetail the foreign policy of America. That's what I meant actually. Even severe is to cut. Separate is just to chart another way of doing it. When you say severance of ties, you cut the diplomatic relations. I cannot do that. Why? It's to the best interest of my country that we maintain that relationship. Because the people of my country is not ready to accept.
Duterte said during his visit to China on Thursday that Manila was separating from the U.S. and building closer ties with Beijing. Yesterday, the Obama administration continued to express concern about those comments. White House spokesman Josh Earnest said the Philippine leader has made too many troubling public statements in recent months. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Russell visits the Philippines this weekend to try to clarify Duterte's position.
Popular websites across wide swaths of the United States were inaccessible yesterday after a cyber attack on a little-known internet infrastructure company. A hacker group that says it has members in China, India and Russia claim responsibility, but that hasn't been verified by authorities. Alan Bugnier reports.
New Hampshire-based Dyn said its data centers were hit by 3 waves of denial-of-service attacks. They overwhelmed targeted machines with junk data traffic. That meant companies that Dyn services couldn't be accessed by users, including Netflix, Twitter, and PayPal, just to name a few. The attack appears to have relied on hundreds of thousands of internet-connected devices, such as cameras, baby monitors, and routers that are prevalent in millions of homes.
Manufacturers are not necessarily locking these devices down. It makes it really easy for an attacker to take advantage of those vulnerabilities, put implants on them, and when they're ready, basically they leverage those same devices that they put implants, malware, viruses, whatever you really want to call it, to launch this attack on one particular website or company.
The denial-of-service attack was likened to tearing up a roadmap before heading to a store. The store might be open, but it's useless to you if you can't find it. Kaplan notes that while the attack doesn't instill confidence, it also doesn't mean data was vulnerable.
We're talking about data not necessarily being able to be accessed, but at the same time, hackers are not able to get access to that data themselves.
Members from a shadowy collective that calls itself New World Hackers claimed responsibility over Twitter. They said they did it to expose security vulnerabilities. The collective, which says it has hackers in China, India, and Russia, also claimed responsibility for past cyber attacks on ESPN, BBC, and Islamic State. The White House called the disruption malicious, but couldn't verify the group's assertion. Spokesman Josh Earnest said the Department of Homeland Security is trying to get to the bottom of the attack. Alan Bugnier, TVB News.
A massive trade deal between the European Union and Canada appears to be in doubt after Ottawa walked away from the talks. The negotiations collapsed over a deadlock with a small region in Belgium that has been defying multinational efforts to have the pact signed next week. James Aitken reports.
It was a stunning setback. The pact, known as CETA, was supposed to be signed next Thursday in Brussels, but it needs unanimous support within the EU. And Belgium, in turn, needs unanimity among its regions. Officials worked around the clock to try to break the deadlock, but then Canada walked away, saying it was impossible to overcome differences with Wallonia, a French-speaking region of 3.5 million people. Canadian International Trade Minister Chrystia Freeland declared the EU is not capable of having an international deal, even with a nation with such European values as Canada. The pact had been agreed on provisionally 2 years ago. Supporters say it would set standards for free trade and globalization, while creating billions in trade by cutting tariffs and lowering other barriers to commerce. It would also maintain European safeguards on social, environmental, and labor issues. But Wallonia wants more, including guarantees to protect its farmers. It also fears the agreement will allow huge North American multinationals to crush smaller enterprises in Wallonia. Now, the collapse of talks is raising questions about the bloc's credibility as a trade partner. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker questioned that if the EU can't ink a trade deal with a democratic and transparent country like Canada, how could it negotiate other major international agreements? Still, a glimmer of hope remains as officials reach out in a bid to salvage the deal.
The door for every step forward is open, but quite clear. The problems on the table are European problems, and we have to solve it.
While local politics has been blamed for holding up a major international trade deal, Wallonia's leader stresses the question isn't about rejecting globalization, but about what kind of rules should govern it. James Aitken, TVB News.
Still ahead in the news. At the airport after Typhoon Haima. Scores dead in train disaster in Cameroon. And meet the next World Cup mascot.
And a warm welcome back to TVB News. A day after the city was hit by Typhoon Haima, the airport is busy trying to clear the backlog. The number of flights in and out of Hong Kong today is expected to top 1,000. Kael Blong has more.
After Typhoon Haima left Hong Kong, the airport has been flooded with passengers trying to take off. Some of them, who were stranded for the whole night last night, were sleeping at the terminal. The airport authority has been rescheduling flights to clear the backlog. The airport is expected to handle more than 1,000 flights today. However, some of the flights remain cancelled. This tourist, who is heading to Malaysia, said he has waited for more than 30 hours, but the airline still hasn't made any arrangements for them.
Yes, confused, because they only say, I'm sorry, cancel because of bad situation and all flight same. So we can't do anything. Even give me accommodation or food or drink or something else. No, very tired, very tired, very tired.
And more passengers have complained about hotels nearby jacking up the price, forcing them to wait in the airport. This tourist says the original price for a room is around $1,800, but it was raised to around $4,000 to $5,000. The airport authorities said as flights are gradually resuming after the typhoon, airport operation is going to be very busy. Some flights are still expected to be delayed, and passengers are urged to check the latest flight status before heading to the airport. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Members of the public got a sneak peek at the new Whampoa MTR station ahead of the official opening of the Kwun Tong Line extension tomorrow. An open day was held today. Queues formed outside the station with people eager to check out the new facilities. Some are hoping the new line will make their daily commute easier. Because of constraints in construction, the station has 2 unconnected concourses with a total of 4 exits. But some passengers are concerned that if they make a wrong turn at the platform, they can't reach the other concourse through the station because they would have left the paid area.
More overseas news. The death toll has climbed to at least 53 after an overloaded train derailed along a rail line that links Cameroon's 2 major cities. More than 300 others were injured. Officials say the train had been carrying 1,300 passengers instead of the usual 600 when it went off the rails. Many of the injured have been transported to hospital, but emergency workers are having trouble recovering some of the dead and injured still trapped in the wreckage. Heavy rains have washed out parts of the roads in the area, and very few medical staff have been available.
The UN Human Rights Office says it has verified information that Islamic State militants forced more than 500 people out of Iraqi villages. Officials say it's part of a strategy to prevent civilians from escaping to areas controlled by Iraqi security forces. The UN says it is also concerned that Islamic State has used civilians as human shields. It's investigating reports that at least 40 civilians were executed for suspected disloyalty. Meanwhile, Iraqi police say a massive Islamic State assault on targets in and around the northern city of Kirkuk has ended. Officials say all the attackers were killed or blew themselves up. The assault appeared to be aimed at diverting attention from the city of Mosul, where Iraqi forces are waging a major offensive.
Authorities in Mexico say they've arrested the former police chief connected with the suspected massacre of 43 students 2 years ago. 58-year-old Felipe Flores, the former police chief of Iguala, had been at large for 2 years. The National Security Commission said Flores is being charged with organized crime and kidnapping the students. They were taken by police in Iguala in September 2014. And prosecutors say they were handed over to a drug gang, killed and incinerated in a trash dump. Independent experts have cast doubt on that, however. All right, kicking off with football, Tony?
Kicking off with football, certainly, yes. Big match tomorrow. Manchester United are gearing up for a crunch match against Chelsea in the English Premier League tomorrow. In other football news, World Cup organisers